This video is brought to you by Ground News. Through her first year in office, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has managed to remain at the top of the popularity list of European leaders, something we explored in a video back in July. However, as time marches on, her approval has been in decline as her government faces difficulties on multiple fronts, leading some to declare that her honeymoon is now over. So in this video, we'll explore why this is, looking at two crucial areas: migration and the economy. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So let's start with migration. As Italy is one of the European Union's key points of entry for irregular migrants, in particular those crossing the Mediterranean from Tunisia to Libya, it is no surprise that migration has been a hot political topic in the country for some time. Meloni's Brothers of Italy party won the 2020 election, having campaigned with a hard line on migration. She pledged to stop the flow of people crossing the Mediterranean, with measures including a naval blockade to prevent boats from leaving North Africa in the first place. However, since forming what was described as Italy's most right-wing government since the Second World War on the 22nd of October 2022, Meloni's government has undoubtedly failed to meet the migration-related pledges she campaigned on. The number of irregular migrants landing on Italian shores so far this year has nearly doubled compared to the same period in 2022, and has nearly tripled since 2021. It's perhaps unsurprising then that a poll from September 2023 found that 71% of Italians think that she's done less than she had promised on immigration. In fact, Meloni herself has conceded that clearly she had hoped to do better, saying, "The results are not what we hoped for. It's certainly a very complex problem, but I'm sure we will get to the bottom of it." Some recently approved measures include building new detention centres and extending the maximum length of time from 3 to 18 months that rejected asylum seekers can be held in pre-deportation detention. Nevertheless, a recent poll found that 66% of Italians do not have faith in the government's ability to handle the issue. The proposal for a naval blockade has so far gone nowhere, while Meloni continues to push for it at an EU level. For now, her flagship action on migration has been an Italian-backed deal between the EU and Tunisia, which envisioned sending hundreds of millions of euros to the Tunisian government to help it tighten its borders and prevent migrant boats from leaving the country. However, despite the deal being signed off and celebrated by those that struck it, it now appears to be faltering as the two sides have locked horns on the financing and implementation of the deal. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has somewhat aligned herself with Italy and pledged EU-level support for the Italian government in dealing with the migration crisis, promising a coordinated response, while on a visit with Meloni to the Italian island of Lampedusa, which has seen a surge in arrivals by boat from nearby Tunisia. But the promise of EU assistance might not do much to assuage the concerns of the Italian public, 73% of whom don't have faith in the EU to help Italy with migration. But migration isn't the only problem for Meloni, as the economy might also be a cause for concern for her government. After 0.6% growth in the first quarter of 2023, Italy's economy shrank by 0.4% in the second quarter, and the Italian Central Bank in October revised down its annual growth forecast for 2023 from 1.3% to 0.7%. Less than impressive headline figures are one thing, but the Italian government has also struggled in recent months over financial and economic policy, particularly in relation to a windfall tax on bank profits. The tax, initially announced in August, became the subject of criticism from the country's banks, whose share prices dropped sharply following the announcement, but also drew criticism from the European Central Bank. The policy itself, and the way it was announced and communicated, also highlighted divisions within Meloni's governing coalition, with Forza Italia, a junior coalition partner party, seeking to amend the tax plan to soften the blow for banks, and saying it had been announced without discussion. The windfall tax was eventually diluted from its original form, with concessions made to enable banks to opt out of the tax by taking 2.5 times what they would have paid for the tax and putting it in their capital reserves. So far, at least 2 of Italy's largest banks, and some others, have said that they will use this opt-out, meaning that the potential income from the windfall tax will be slashed by more than 1.2 billion euros. Italy may also be heading for a showdown with the European Union over its €24 billion budget for 2024, which the Italian cabinet approved in October. It will require some €15.7 billion of extra borrowing to finance the increased spending and tax cuts, which aim to support large families and leave more money in the pockets of low and medium income earners. However, amid economic pressure, the Italian government has also increased its budget deficit forecast for 2023, which is now forecast at 5.3% of GDP, up from an earlier estimate of 4.5%, with the deficit for 2024 also revised upwards to 4.3% from 3.7% of GDP. Whatever the merits of specific budgetary policies, the increased borrowing was ill-received by financial markets and also leaves Italy further away from EU rules that cap budget deficits at 3% of GDP. For reference, these rules were suspended during the pandemic but are being reintroduced next year. Now, Meloni could have just ignored all the concerns of the financial markets and gone all in on greater tax cuts and spending to meet her election pledges. But she knows that that would come with serious risk of economic turmoil, a lesson learned the hard way by former British Prime Minister Liz Truss. Instead, she'll need to guide the country through the current economic slowdown, while trying to prevent splits opening within her three-party coalition, and balance meeting her pledges to the electorate with keeping the financial markets, and indeed the European Union, happy. Not exactly an easy task. It's with all this in mind that some have declared Meloni's honeymoon phase as being over, after a year in office. But politically, it's not all doom and gloom for her. While her approval ratings have been in steady decline for some time, she still remains pretty popular relative to some of her other European counterparts. Additionally, her Brothers of Italy party is still by far the most popular party, according to polling, with it maintaining a steady lead over not just opposition parties, but also her two junior coalition partners. But we'll have to wait and see if she can maintain this through the politically rocky times ahead. Keeping track of this will require following a number of different news stories from a wide range of outlets. This is all possible thanks to our sponsor Ground News, a website and app designed to help you take the power of the media into your own hands. Here's how it works. Every day, Ground News ingests over 50,000 articles from all over the world. They then organise these articles by story. For each and every story, you can see the number of reporting sources, where these sources lean on the political spectrum at an individual level and group level, compare the headlines of each source, and read each article all without ever leaving the app. For example, here's a story relevant to today's video: Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Right away, you can see that the story had 113 outlets reporting on it. 28% lean left, while 39% lean right. Every story also comes with a detailed view of the bias distribution, factuality scores, and even specific ownership information. But my favourite part has to be their new comparison feature, which highlights specific differences in left-leaning and right-leaning reporting. Ground News is such a useful tool for our current media landscape, and I think an app like this will only become more essential as the media landscape continues to evolve. Our team at TLDR likes Ground News so much that we've decided to offer 30% off the Ground News Vantage plan to all our viewers. That's under $6 a month for unlimited access to every incredible Ground News feature. This offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.